Yeah. I mean, the ostrich effect, it's the term used in personal finance because most people literally go around with their head buried in the sand.
Mm,
And I'm never blaming anyone. I'm not here to shame anyone
mm,
because I was there too, right? So I know what it's like when this isn't a normal part of your life or conversations or people aren't having these discussions around you. It's really easy, especially growing up in a culture or society where money is taboo, to just avoid looking at your bank account, to just kind of say, well, money comes in and I think X goes out. It kind of all balances out and just kind of hope things take care of themselves. So I get why that happens, but it really is coming back to basics. So it's taking people through like, okay, how much are you really making? Especially for any business owners who might have multiple sources of income coming in, like how much are you actually making? What's actually going out? And there's always money leakages. You always find at least an extra couple of £100 where money is just flying out and they don't even know why. They don't know where it's going. It's just stuff they don't need or don't want, or it's an unused
mm.
subscription. It's like, all right, let's close those money leakages first and then start looking at what's your savings situation. And I speak with people in their 40s and 50s and they're like, I have no savings. It just hasn't been part of my conversation. It hasn't been part of my upbringing. I've been busy getting a mortgage and working on my career and raising a family and trying to, have a certain standard of living. It just hasn't been at the forefront of their conversations or mind. And so we're like, okay, well, let's figure this piece out because before we invest, we need to really hone in on that. What about credit card debt? Right? I've had conversations with people who are like, I got a credit card and it's a 0% interest. And so they're flying through it and
Mm.
they're building up expenses and they think that's fantastic. And I'm like, you still need to pay this off.
Back, exactly.
Great to have it at zero
Yeah.
interest, but this is still an expense that you need to like cover and that won't last forever. So do you have a plan in place? And so I think the most confronting piece and the most empowering piece really is actually just sitting down and going, okay, what's actually going on? And so we use this net worth planner that I've built and it's very simple, right? I've gone through my finance years, but like we keep it really, really simple. It's all laid out on one page. What's coming in, what's going out, where have you saved, where's your debt, what's going on, and what can we do to actually start building wealth from here? So it's always going back to basics. And it's like everything. It's just like almost putting in place the simple things first. And I think when it comes to finance, especially, we think it has to be really complicated. And the financial industry has its own language that it loves to make things really complex. Because if I can convince you that you can't do it yourself, then you're happy to pay financial advisors like massive amounts of money so they'll figure it out for you. But it's not. Come back to the simple principles and take back your own power, get in control of your finances. It changes not just your relationship with money, but literally every single aspect of your life. I've had marriages saved from going through this process with people where like, financial stress is number two reason for
Mm.
divorce. So if you care about your relationship, care about your marriage, like get your finances in order, get on the same page together. So my experience is that, yeah, we're talking about money and we're talking about numbers, but it's so much bigger. It's so much more beyond that. It's freedom, it's sense of peace of mind. I can sleep well at night. I know my kids are taken care of. My marriage is going good. My relationship's good because we're on the same page. We're working as a team together. All that stuff that we've shoved under the carpet has now come to the surface. So, and we're addressing it together. So, long story short, personal finances, managing the basics first will be step one.
Well, I love the fact that you're demystifying finance and starting in that place, because if you don't get an understanding of where you stand financially, I imagine that the underlying reason people don't do that is because of fear. So they don't want to look at their finances because they're afraid of what they might find out. And so they're not addressing that fear. They're not addressing, and this is the mindset of peace. They're not addressing the thoughts that are beneath so they're ignoring it. And I would imagine it's very liberating when someone actually sits down, and even if they find something they don't like, you go, but okay, but now you know, and now let's create a plan. And there must be that great sense of ownership and autonomy. Go, okay, now I'm beginning to take responsibility. That's the empowerment phase, isn't it? I'm beginning to take ownership. I can create something out of this.
Like you hit the nail on the head. It absolutely is. The majority of people say, I am afraid to look at it as to what I'll find. The reality is it still exists. So
Yeah, exactly.
we can overcome that fear and we can look at it, then we can put in place a plan. And like, yes, the words of, having sovereignty over money, having a sense of control, empowerment, like before anything's even changed, before we've even said, okay, here's your strategy to build wealth, and
Mm.
let's do all the nervous system, like before anything else, just actually looking at it and saying, okay, well, now I know where I am. Like, what's my starting point? Like, that piece alone creates such a shift. And now there's momentum, and now we can see, okay, now I know where I am. Where do I want to get to?
The I'm guessing I'm at least a couple of decades older than you, if not more. And what what I see, maybe you haven't, we certainly haven't experienced yet, but you haven't witnessed yet. I see a lot of people in there, say, probably about your mid 50s onwards, maybe, that you begin to realize the end is nigh. Whether you have a business, or whether you have, just a job or whatever, pension, and you realize that the time frame, your earning time frame, is probably limited now. And I've seen a lot of people who begin to realize, I don't have enough. And in many cases, they just haven't planned for it. Now, I have spoken to people literally in their late 50s who haven't sat down and looked at their finances. And I'm saying to them, are you
Yeah.
planning when are you planning on retiring? Are you planning on retiring at 65? And you haven't given any consideration to how you're going to fund that. And my concern is that we will end up like when you go to the US and you walk into Walmart and you're being served by someone who's, 75 years of age, because they simply haven't got the finance.
Yeah.
And the really sad thing about that is that had they started when they were in their mid 20s or 30 or something, they could have, even if they had a basic job all their life, they could have transformed that entirely. It's something I'm hugely passionate about.
It is. I have the same observation when I see people who in their much elder years and they're working in stores, and I think, I hope this is because you actually want to be out and
Yeah.
socializing, but the reality is it's probably for financial reasons. Um, and it is really heartbreaking, because you're right. You don't need to be making an extraordinary salary. You don't need to make a lot of money. And I always say this, it's not how much you make, it's what you do with what you make that matters the most. Because someone could be making $1 million and someone could be making 50K, and the person making 50K could be better off financially in the long term if they're managing that money. And that might sound crazy or silly to some people right now listening, but it is true. If you manage your money properly, given your income and your lifestyle and everything else, if you can manage that money and just take smart decisions early, like, it pays off in the long run. And it's never too late. I would say that too. I still have people coming to work with me in their mid 50s, and they're like, I know I've left a little bit later, but what can we do? And there's always steps you can take. It's never too late to get started, but getting started now is really, really the key thing.
While we're on the topic of young people, I've had this debate recently of Ramit Zethi. Is that what's the guy's name? Is that
Yeah, yeah.
the financial
I will show
advisor?
you how to be rich. I will make you rich with
Yeah,
ease.
whatever it is. And he says a lot of really, really good stuff. And I've had a debate over with people over his opinion on buying or renting a home. And
Yeah.
I suppose I'm in the view of one should own a home. I'm open to have it debated, but it's from the perspective that, because I'm close on 60 years of age, I'm going, well, the wonderful position I'm in is that I own my homes. So, like, yeah, even if my income disappeared, I can live in a very nice home. I can holiday in a very nice home because I own them. But I think if you're going to get old, so when people talk about not owning a home, I kind of go, but you will reach a point in your life, unless you've properly invested and you have, I hate the word passive income, but you have income coming in from investments. You will reach a point you won't work anymore, and how do you provide? So when you're speaking with younger people, do you have a particular angle you take on that as to whether or not a property is something they should own, or how do you view that?
Yeah, I mean, it's a really interesting conversation, and it's the same in Rich Dad Poor Dad. He talks about it as well, of like, your home is not an asset; it is a liability, and we have to be really clear on it. And like, there's so many different financial experts will say, buying a house, it's not a financial decision; that is like more of a lifestyle
Yeah.
decision. But it comes down to, if you're renting and you're not doing anything with building wealth or passive
Mm.
income through investing, then that's probably not a great position
Yeah.
to be in if you're thinking of just renting for the rest of your life, because you will reach a point that you don't want to work anymore. There's no income coming in. And then what? Like, are you just reliant on maybe some savings you have, or what's going to happen then? So if it's that alternative, then, looking to get on the property ladder, of course, fantastic if you're not expecting to have any income in the future. The path that I'm going down, and I see a lot more people going down too, is choosing the alternative of investing. Just say I can put my money to work for me. I know that will build to a certain level of wealth. And again, this varies across countries,
Mm.
but it will build to a certain level of wealth. And at some point, I can start withdrawing from that, and that will cover me for an income in
Yeah.
my later years. But that's the piece that we need to make sure is in part of the
Yeah.
equation. It's not just, do I rent or buy? And also, buying a home these days, there's a massive hurdle. I speak with a lot of women who cannot get on the property ladder,
Absolutely.
especially if they're single women, even if they're working in reputable companies, good jobs, good income. They're like, I can't afford to buy a home in Ireland right now. And so they're really struggling with that piece. Whereas investing, it can be accessible. Do you have €100? You can start investing today. Now, the challenge in Ireland is that retail investing, so investing for the regular person, the individual like you and I, it's not very favorable. The government hasn't set it up to be amazingly incentivizing, versus if we look at the UK, the US, you have a lot more preferable structures to invest through. But even in that, saying that, it's still better than nothing. You're still making your money work for you, and it's a whole lot better than letting your money sit in a regular
Mm.
bank account. Like, just having your money sitting in AIB or Bank of Ireland, and these days, if it's just in a regular account, like, people don't understand, like, inflation, like, it's eating away at your money. Like,
Mm.
it's the 10K today is not worth 10K in 5 years. So it really comes down to, well, what is my current circumstances? If I can't get on a property ladder, well, what is my alternative? And investing is a path that is really readily accessible for the majority of people. Even for those who think it's totally out of their realm, it isn't, especially with, fractional investing and things like, you can invest with really small amounts of money. Um, and it's a lot less risky in a sense than leaving your money sit in a regular account where inflation is going to eat away at it. At least investing is giving your money a fighting chance to grow, and you can protect it. So that's my viewpoint on it.
But I think also if you if you can get that message to people young enough, and then they have decades, because if you've 30 if you've 3 decades, if you've 30 years before you reach that point of retirement or whatever, like,
Yeah.
a small amount of money can grow to a massive amount of money. So if you're sensible enough to take that approach, I would say you're certainly going to find yourself in front. I mean, I have 3 adult sons, and it's something, since the time they were kids, I have been adamant about getting them to start investing, and thankfully I think they've grasped it, to get them to
Yeah.
understand the magic you have now, and they're in their 20s and 30s
Mm.
now, but the magic you have now to get started in this now, because then, to some degree, I don't care what you do for a living, go and do whatever your passion pursues, and hope you'll make money, maybe you won't, I don't know, but via that investing, you're creating this financial independence. But the interesting thing, as my kids were younger, and I'd be speaking to other, parents, they would look at me like they had no comprehension of what I was talking about, because they just didn't understand it. It means that if they don't understand it, they're not passing it on to their children, because they've no comprehension of it.
No, absolutely. And it's, I have so many parents now coming to work with me, and one of the motivations that they cite when we're discussing, like, why do you want to join one of our communities or
Mm.
programs, and like, why do you want to start learning this? And they say, I want to be able to not just do this for me, but do this for my kids, and like, teach them. And it's like, if you don't know and you're not empowered yourself, how are you supposed to pass this down?
Mm.
And it's something, as I have a young stepson, I have a baby on the way.
Oh,
So
congratulations.
I
So you're well thinking of the future.
very much, and I already have these conversations, these little fake or hypothetical conversations in my head of like, what will I be teaching her about? And but it's such a different, like, it's just gonna be such a different experience than when I grew up. And when we're talking about money in these conversations too, it's not just currency, and it's not just whatever. We're talking about money in its own sense. It's an energy, like, where literally we can rewrite lineages, we can break generational patterns of maybe lack or scarcity, and we can write new narratives and stories for our next generation, for passing down the lineage, which is so exciting. Because yes, it's for me and it's for when I get older, and to make sure that I'm not a financial burden on my kids, which you see a lot of happening. Adults and parents who are getting older now, they don't have any financial cushion in place, and the burden is passed on to their kids of like, how do we take care of mom and dad? Right? I never want that situation, but I also want to ensure that my kids grow up and they never have to make decisions out of, well, I need this paycheck. I have to stay here because of the money, or I'm in some weird power dynamic over money in a relationship. That they always have their own money, and they have that sense of a healthy relationship with what money is, to understand that, it's not the love of money that's the root of all evil. It's the
Mm.
love of money above all else that is the root of all evil, right? So put money in its place, understand that it's your employee, it's there to serve you and support you, but have a healthy relationship with it. And, that starts from a very young age. Like by the time we're 7, our beliefs, for the most part, are kind of set in stone. And then we have to go on the process as adults of like all the deconditioning and the rewiring and all that fun journey. But if we can get them as kids, it's just like, they're a sponge. Like give them a healthy relationship with money from when they're young, and it's completely transformed things.
So I guess we both grew up in Ireland, and I grew up. I was born in the '60s, so uh, but my experience of life in the '70s and '80s, certainly in Ireland, was it. Ireland was a very, very different country. I mean, it's a very prosperous, very prosperous country now, but it wasn't back then. There was poverty is the wrong word, but there was a lot of scarcity is a much better word, and people lived in scarcity. My parents were relatively prosperous, but had scarcity mindsets. In other words, that if that makes sense, I mean, we lived
Yeah.
relatively in a prosperous way, but their mindsets were that of lack, I suppose. But that's what we were surrounded by, and maybe it was the same experience for you, but I had to make a very concerted effort by immersing myself into a lot of positive psychology, whatever you want to call it. But I had to go, okay, there's this and there's this. This is what my society is telling me about scarcity, about lack, about poverty, all about hard work, all of these things. And there's this whole set of teachings or life experience here, and
Mm-hmm.
which is that I want. And for me, it was a choice of, well, I'm going to immerse myself in this education. And very much like yourself, there's two sides to that. There's the practical, I need to know how this stuff works, but I need the mindset as well and the soul set, because that's hugely important. If I don't get both right, I had to immerse myself in that and then drag myself out of that. But around you, when you certainly when I was doing that, people thought it was strange. People thought, what are you up to? Laughing, I can see, was probably the same for you. But
Yeah.
what I found is, then there comes a time, and maybe that takes many, many years or even decades. There comes a time when they stop laughing, because your life has
Yeah.
become entirely different to theirs. But then they've usually a story about why you were lucky. So it's so I
Um,
does that resonate? The decades
so
haven't
much
changed
fun.
that story, huh?
um, Massively so. I mean, I'm pretty much sure that people probably were calling me a witch long before I actually just owned that title,
Yeah, yeah.
because I grew up in the '80s, so a little bit later, but um, I followed a path where I thought money would lead me. We grew up in a very good family. Like I never struggled or wondered where my next meal was going to come. But I certainly didn't grow up in a household where money was discussed, or investing was ever even like investing was laughable.
Hmm.
Like it was literally like a laughable topic. Like, oh yeah, as if. So it didn't come from those conversations or that upbringing, but a family that believed in me and loved me, which was the foundation for everything else. It gave me the courage to then go and find out solutions for myself. But so I was like, well, I want to make money. Like, if I'd seen my mom didn't really have money, she always had to ask my dad for it. I thought, I don't want to be in that situation when I'm older. So let me get educated. Like, mom left school when she was 16, my dad when he was 17. Like, they didn't really have the opportunities and the privilege that I did, that they gave me as I grew up. So I got educated, and I thought, well, where's the money? It's in finance. It has to be, right? Like, I had no idea. Um, but studied finance and then became a chartered accountant and was working in this big four firm, but my bank account was not reflecting that. I was like, how am I this educated and with these many good grades and I did what I was told to do, but
Yeah.
where I'm still struggling every month. Like what is going on? Something's not clicking. And that is when I turned to really delving into the personal development space, and I took some big bets on myself and invested a lot of money that I didn't have to travel across the world and learn from some of the best teachers in the science around getting rich, like the mindset, the energy, the manifestation side of things. And definitely people thought I was crazy. Like, I mean, to the point that I remember a HR director calling me in when I told my firm I was leaving and thought I was having some quarter life crisis and was like, you don't have another job lined up. You're obviously, there's something wrong with you. And I said, no, I immersed myself in his teachings of an amazing man over in Toronto and just learned that life could be different. And I knew it started internally. And I had shifted my mindset so much that I was very confident to leave and I knew something better was awaiting me. And it did within a matter of weeks. Moved to London, got the most incredible job, was living out the dream of 18-year-old me when I first walked through the gates of UCC, to study finance, and my whole life changed, like completely transformed. And yes, the financial aspects changed, but I was becoming a different person. And it was absolutely that case when before all that happened, people thought I was insane. You're leaving a good job. You're flying across the country to learn from some wizard man. Like, what are you doing? Laura's literally lost her mind. Like, we're just going to write her off. And then you start posting about that on social media and you get all sorts of looks. But I stuck with it. I made sure that I was surrounding myself in communities that also kind of thought like me. And so I wasn't a complete alien. And eventually things began to show up. Right? So the inner world is reflected in your outer world. So my outer world began to then adapt to what had shifted internally. And as I said, like the money changed, the opportunities, like I was living this really incredible life that I had, and I say manifested or created intentionally through vision, through shifting my mindset. And then I think people started to laugh a little bit less. And now we've kind of come full circle where I'm really passionate about teaching what I did, to help others to make the same shift for themselves, those who are willing and wanting.
So I'm guessing the amazing man you met was Bob Proctor.
Indeed, yes. Incredible mentor.